Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, "Don't Want to Hear About How Your Favorite Employee is Pricing Things Wrong? Sweet, I'll get a $200 game for $16. Until recently I worked at half-price books, and as the title implies, my co-worker would price video games way off market value. When I tried to tell the boss, she said, well, he knows a lot about video games, I'm sure he knows what he is doing. Even when I showed them clear examples, they still would say things like, well, it all still sells. For the record, they have the worst video game sales in the district by a lot. The thing is, despite being a video game need, he had enormous bias and flat-out ignored policy. Just like with books, if a game is still in print, then it should go out for half. Not only did he refuse to do that, he also refused to look up current prices, so you would find a game that is sold new for $20 and he would have it used $29.99. If he liked the games, the price went up, if he didn't like them, then they went down. With loose games, he just went with his gut. He even priced PC games that were opened and needed a code. If I ever said anything, he would say, I work here and have enough money to buy anything in there. If they can't afford it, that's on them. What does the price being too high have to do with how much money people have? The last batch of games to come in before 8 left were loose Pokemon games. The person who bought them even left a note saying how much each of the games should go out for. Did he use those prices? He'll know. No one knows as much about gaming as him, so he adjusted all the prices down. Why, you may ask? Well, he informed me that adults don't play Pokemon and kids won't pay much for them. So on my last day, I bought the copy of Pokemon Black 2 for $16 with my discount. Technically it's a $100 game, but Amazon has it for $200. So I went with that price. After buying it, I showed the manager the great deal they gave me and they became visibly angry. She said she would talk to him about it, but last I heard she had said nothing to him, but did tell the regional manager that I had taken advantage of them. Next one is titled, You Said Stop, So I Stopped. A little background. I work in a manufacturing facility as part of a separate R&D group. Generally I don't do manufacturing, but as some of you may know from my previous posts, my manager gets requests for me to do work for the plant from time to time when my machine's utilization is lower than the plant's and they need a push. Open at the end of last year, when I was told I had a job from the plant, just a small amount of overflow they couldn't handle, approximately 13 pieces. Now, for context, 13 is like 6 months worth of deliverable product for this particular job. 1 to 3 a month from us to the customer. Working in batches of 3 to 4, it can take up to 2 weeks of work to get those pieces off my plate. Multiple machines, iterative processing with metrology in between to make sure I'm hitting the tolerances exactly. Anyway, I've had issues in the past with the plant management not being clear on what the expectations are, and I've steadily been getting more responsibilities from my own boss as I've grown into my position. Not to mention we're 2 weeks out from the Christmas holiday shutdown, most of the plant will be off for like 10 days and I'll be on vacation not giving a single duck about work. So, to make sure we're all on the same page, I call a meeting about the job with the fabrication manager, 2 of the shift supervisors, and my boss, essentially all the people looking to me to get the job done. I have 3 specific requests before I start the jobs. 1. It is the plant management supervisor's responsibility to let me know the due dates for the parts. Expectation is like, we need 2 for January, 3 for February, 1 for March, etc. And it's their job to tell me this with proper lead time, at least 2 weeks, but ideally more, so I can work them into my other duties. 2. I have my own responsibilities that have to come first, so if they want parts from me, they have to give me proper heads up that they need them. I don't work for the plant and I really don't have time to check in every week to see if they think they'll need parts in the coming weeks. 3. If I don't hear from them, the assumption is they're either ahead on their end of the same job and or don't need the parts from me right now, so I won't be processing them. I spoke to my boss ahead of time about these expectations and he wholeheartedly agreed. We're doing them a favor and he has shit he wants me to do for our milestones. Everyone agrees in the meeting and the main supervisor said up front, we need 4 for January. Great, I had a couple weeks before Christmas and a clean plate, so I was able to pump out 6 parts. Half the job was done and over with before I left for my vacation. So pleased with myself. Of course I worked until December 23rd and nobody was in the plant to receive the parts. But I came back in January feeling like a badass, ready to hand off more than enough to cover them for their due dates through Feb. First day back, I'm told they plant cannot accept the parts from me. They're backed up and I need to hold them until they can release them to the next team for post-processing. Until then they're in a holding pattern with no idea when they'll need them. Cue malicious compliance. I flat out say, okay, but I busted my butt to get these parts they had to have by January and I'm not going to churn out more product until they take the stuff I already finished. I have my own job to do. So now I have 7 parts completely untouched. Well, it's mid-April and they only took 4 of the first 6 parts from me like a week ago. I haven't touched the other 7 in months, and nobody has come to me asking when they'll be done or indicating they need them by a specific date. I'm going on vacation next week and have a deadline to meet for my department. I just got asked by a different shop floor supervisor. Guy wasn't in the original meeting and I feel bad for him because they sent him my way knowing I wasn't going to have the parts or be willing to comply instantly, asking me where the other parts are. My response is I have 2 parts waiting on release to the plant and none of the others are even close to ready. Before he could even try to lean on me to get a few more done, I reminded him I don't work for him or the plant. I'm completely outside his management structure as a whole and I have my own work to do. He'll get his 2 parts and then we'll have to renegotiate after I come back from my vacation. Next one is titled, "Don't Want to Let Me Train a Replacement Before I Leave?" Alrighty then. I used to work as the dedicated inventory guy for a tire and wheel store that dealt in only that. Big chain. All their guys wear black, not by choice, even on the most blistering of days. Nearly 10 years working there and I was the only one handling their 5,000 to 7,500 tires, along with several hundred wheels, nuts, bolts, tire lube, replacement parts. Basically, I organized the entire store in terms of what was bought, sold, used. I received most shipments, whether a single tire by FedEx or our 2 times a week shipment of 400 to 800 units. Not something I knew for a long time, but my technical job was listed as a 3-person rotating task. I did it all myself. The manager I worked with for most of those 10 years was very happy and supportive of me, trying to make sure I was taken care of if I needed help. Unfortunately, the company underwent plenty of changes after the owner of the whole chain died. It shifted from a family thing to a profit and micromanagement thing. My great manager was stressed and went from great to not so great. I won't deny I got pretty upset with a few things from him, but it was just the situation didn't favor him. Ultimately, he was transferred to an administrative position to finish out till retirement and we got a new manager and lots of extra salary salesmen. I was left on inventory, as everyone confirmed I was the only guy for the job that knew anything. They tried giving me newbies to learn the ropes, but I only got a couple days with them before they were pulled for more important things. Eventually, they gave up caring and figured I would do inventory for the foreseeable future. Well, the end of 2018 came with me looking for other opportunities. It wasn't entirely because of the shift at work, but doing a 3-person job after 10 years was starting to take its toll on my back. I started about 20 and was getting close to 30. I can't deny I was getting kinda scared I would do something irreparable to my back that would stick with me forever. They pulled equipment I needed to do better without straining myself more, made the process of pulling inventory more bureaucratic and lengthy without need for it, and would keep trying to limit my time doing things but expect the same results. They also kept resisting my plans to reorganize stock because brands don't always need the same amount of space. That major brand that did really well 3 years ago and taking up 1,000 tires worth of space only takes up 400 now. But hey, I have this brand that did an overhaul and we used to carry barely 250 for them. Now we are ordering hundreds of them weekly with a need for 750 units of space. So there's stock unable to fit in one place but a huge gap in another I can fill. I'm sure some of you can understand. You don't just start shoving items from the wrong brand into a gap because there's space there, use it. As I'm in the final weeks of my lovely tenure there, I've been training for the new job for about 6 weeks. They had plenty of warning to replace my position. I reminded them they should find someone I can give the rundown to before it's too late. My new management, as well as 2 salesmen I never liked, tell me in very businessy and polite terms, just do your job and let us worry about it. I tried to be nice about it because while I don't get on well with the salesman, except one, he was always great, and I love my fellow service techs in the back getting dirty on every car, through the heat of summer and getting our legs turned almost blue when working in the freezing snow and slush of the winter. I then realized that it really is their problem, not mine. Cue the malicious compliance. I found a lovely time when all 3 of my most concerning resistors were away. 2 were on meetings with corporate for 2-3 days. 1 was on vacation for the rest of the week. This was great as it was my last week as well. I hauled all kinds of holes that week. I reorganized the whole place to my OCD specs. I wanted everything to fit. I wanted everything perfectly presentable. I did it my way and got everything in. To note, some years, especially in peak winter with lots coming in, we got so overstocked we couldn't fit everything all at once, which also was because of them not letting me deal with it efficiently. I took care of that overstock and fit it all in. Brands were moved and notes left. I let all my favorite co-workers who pulled my inventory the most know what's up. They adapted instantly because it's really not that hard. Just remember the salt is in the pantry now, not next to the stove. I was commended on my effort and thanked for doing that before leaving. However, I knew what was coming. No, not from the guys who didn't want my organization methods. By not replacing me or at least covering what I've been doing for 10 years, well, imagine it like giving someone a nice clean and well-working car that they never maintained because it was always taken care of. I started my new job and got paid almost double. A couple months in and I start getting calls from former co-workers. Apparently, they never really tried to replace me at all. Things fell apart. Tires were shoved into the racks with no regard for where they belonged. If there was space, fill it. After 3 months, I heard 3 longtime employees walked out because the lack of organization was killing their bay times for dealing with cars, leading to a domino fall of stressful work environment stuff. It took an average of 15 minutes at our store to deal with most things on one car. However, I was told it was taking that long just to find the units needed after pulling the car in. Heck. Sometimes they gave up and tried to huff it to another nearby store to find their tires, thinking they had an inventory error. Obviously, that level of delay and inefficiency made the managers angry at those they blamed. Service techs usually got the heat. I wish I could say there were more juicy details about the aftermath, but at a certain point, all my ears in that store left. I feel like that's enough said in and of itself. One bit that came about the 4 or 5 month mark after I left though, one of the managers called me on my personal phone. They asked how I was doing and wondered if my new job was working out. I was very happy and energetically told them how great I felt in my new job. He inquired whether I might be interested in helping out at the store again. I declined. Now I'm not the best at reading people, but this person seems so lost in their tone that I can only guess they had so little luck in finding a replacement for what I did. I'm far more appreciated now in my new job. The thing that made me feel a little bad, but also good-ish, is that my former co-workers agreed that when I left was when things started to get terrible. It probably didn't hurt that I was the insatiable goof of the store too who told so many bad puns. Next one is titled, "Do Not Leave Your Luggage Unattended." This takes place in late 2001, early 2002, so I am a little fuzzy on the details, but the main details are true. It was just a few months after the 9/11 tragedy and the first time my husband and I had flown since the events of that day. We went to LA, a trade show for the industry he works in, and flew in and out of LAX. Everyone was still nervous about flying, and it seemed the rules about what you could and couldn't take on the plane changed weekly. I think they were saying to allow 2 or 3 hours at the airport before your flight time to check in and go through security. A shuttle service was to pick us up at our hotel and get us to the airport for our return trip. They weren't allowing the recommended time, which made me nervous, and on top of that they were late showing up, leaving us only about an hour to check in and get through security. There was a long line to check in and a lot of grumbling around us. Every 2 minutes there was an announcement about not leaving your baggage unattended and to notify security if you see unattended baggage. 3 or 4 guys who had been on our shuttle were in line behind us and were going to our city as well, and we all thought we were going to miss our plane. Finally, my husband and I were next in line. Suddenly, here comes Karen pushing her way to the front of the crowd. She was dressed in a hot pink tracksuit with bling on it and a matching baseball cap. She had a big pink and black leopard print rolling suitcase, a matching tote bag, and 2 matching small suitcases. Several people protested, telling her where the back of the line was. "I don't care, I am going to XXX, my plane leaves in 30 minutes. I told her, "So are we and we are next." She didn't care, she pushed past me and went running up to the next window, and they waited on her as several of us yelled our protests. The window next to Karen's opened, so we stepped up to it. I noticed Karen put her ticket into her tote bag, not bothering to step aside so the next person could get up to check in. Of course, she was carrying on 2 small suitcases and her tote bag, because she didn't care that you weren't allowed that many carry-ons. I then watched her pick up the 2 suitcases and run off toward her gate, leaving her tote bag behind. I looked over at the guys who had been on our shuttle and they saw the tote as well. We grinned at each other. As one of them stepped up to that counter, he told the rep that there was an unattended bag. She leaned over and recognized it as Karen's. "Oh, I am sure that lady will be right back for it. Cue malicious compliance." The guy said, "But what if she left it here on purpose?" I chimed in, "Aren't we supposed to notify security?" The guy from the shuttle said, "Yes, that is what the announcement keeps saying." He waved to a security guard who was at the end of the counter just a few feet away. The security guard took the bag and sped off down the hall on one of those golf cart things. As my husband and I were headed down the hall to go through security, we saw Karen racing back toward the check-in counter. We made our flight, as did the guys from our shuttle. We were the last ones to board. Karen did not make it. Karen's giant suitcase made it. I saw it on the luggage turnstile when we arrived home. I have no idea what she had to go through to get her bag back or to get on another flight. Last one is titled, "You Don't Want Us to Work Here with That Attitude?" Okay. Many years ago, when I was at university, I got a summer job renovating squash courts. The company was basically the boss, more about him to follow, a van containing all the required equipment, and me and my friend, Rod. He'd started work for John, the boss, first. He needed another guy, recommended me, and boom, I was in. It wasn't a bad job for a summer job. We traveled around the UK, working on squash courts. We'd either paint them, which required scaffolding so we could repaint the lines, the white paint we'd do with really long roller poles, use pneumatic hammers, kangos, to remove the front wall, the plaster goes dead after a while, apparently, or rip up the floors. In the latter 2 cases the boss would then employ skilled subcontractors to replace the floor or wall. So, the work was basically unskilled but pretty physical. The pay was good for a student and we got to drive around the country in a van, stay in cheap hotels, which seemed pretty glamorous at the time, and go out for beers most nights plus save cash for my next term. The boss was pretty posh for someone with such a small business. Maybe he had others, or maybe this paid really well. I don't know, but he lived in a huge house in an expensive part of town, drove a Jaguar, his kids went to private school and called him Pater. He was okay but a bit of a dick. One Friday, we'd got up early in one town, can't remember where, near London somewhere, worked flat out to finish a job, driven 2 hours to the next one, got set up for that, and then broke for lunch. Because we were new in this town we set out to find a fish and chip shop. Staying in hotels obviously meant we couldn't make lunch to take in. It took a while to find one, and when we did they were just cooking some fresh chips, we had to wait to be served. So we did, ate them and went back. We'd been gone about 50 minutes. When we got there, John was there. He'd come to make sure that we had arrived okay, this was pre-mobile, and that everything was going as planned. He wanted to know where we'd been. Lunch, we told him. But we'd been gone over 40 minutes, he said. We explained. He said that wasn't good enough. We said that we'd started work early, driven 2 hours, had to find the place, wait for the chips etc. We were working hard and that this A wasn't our fault and B wasn't unreasonable. He told us that if that was the kind of attitude we had then maybe we shouldn't be working for him. He then left. We finished the job and repacked the van. It contained scaffolding, pneumatic drills, painting equipment and so on. It had to be packed like Tetris to make sure it was organized and accessible. We took turns opening the door, the other one chucking stuff in and then slamming it shut before it all fell out. We drove back to John's where we left the van when based at home. We collected our pay and handed him the keys. "See you Monday for the Bracknell job," he said. "Oh, no, sorry," we said. We had new jobs on Monday. Rod and I were both lifeguards and had called some contacts and got pool work for the following week. It was crappy and didn't last long but, hey, I was a student and didn't care much. But, I don't understand," said John. "Well, you said that if we had an attitude like we did at lunchtime then maybe we shouldn't work for you. We do and so we don't. And we left. Felt great. Thanks for listening.